Well, Anthony, this is pretty amazing, isn't it, to see the level of detail that they're doing. But I think it's really, we see all these different government agencies doing it, but just as people are starting to maybe even get passé about the NSA monitoring everything, they now find out that the FDA is doing that. They're assassinating people's characters who are whistleblowers. They're monitoring what people are saying about the FDA rulings.
Well, isn't it interesting? We see all these dying government organizations and these corporations like Bank of America, for example, spying and desperately trying to make sure there are no whistleblowers to reveal anything about the company.
Yes.
Because they know if the truth came out, they would ultimately meet their downfall. Now, specifically, we could go back to Bank of America with the leaked emails. One of the biggest stories in recent times that we managed to break through InfoWars, through StoryLeak, my website, is the Bank of America emails revealing that Bank of America has all these spying teams that go out on social networking and they look for so-called Occupy protesters or anti-government people, basically anyone that questions the establishment. And then they work with the feds directly in coordinating these people into certain groups and profiling them. And the FDA is just doing that now. And they're also desperately afraid of the whistleblowers inside. And
before we get away from that, I was just talking earlier in the show to Paul Joseph Watson, and he was talking about Glenn Greenwald and his experiences with WikiLeaks and with Julian Assange and everything. And we have the slides that were leaked. Actually, WikiLeaks got a hold of the slides where they were plotting to Bank of America and others were plotting to freeze their accounts, and they were plotting to go after Glenn Greenwald and other leaders personally, just like we see the FDA doing with this Yale radiology expert that worked for them that was blowing the whistle on the GE radiation device. We see that it's a method of personal attack. And in the next hour, we're going to be talking to Kathleen Willey. How did the Clintons come after her? How did the Clintons come after all these women who accused him of sexual misconduct? They went after them with personal assassination attacks. That's what's so very, very dangerous about the surveillance state that we have.
Well, you see this in every single sector, from the nuke commanders getting fired in the military, all the Air Force commanders being pushed off, Obama firing all the generals, to, ultimately the spy sector, where they're now desperately afraid of whistleblowers. You talk to any federal government worker, Obama is going down on anything that's related to whistleblowing. It is the #1 enemy of the state.
Oh, yeah.
That's why the FDA is doing this.
Most of the people that have been prosecuted under the Espionage Act that was put back in, I think, 1917, almost all of them have been under the Obama administration. I think he's done like 6 or 7, and prior to that, and all the other administrations combined, there were 3. And he's like double to triple what these other people have done.
Well, he has Bank of America helping him. He's got the FDA. Yes. He's got multiple wings of this looking into it. And there's actually 2 key things. Judge Napolitano says this is against the 4th Amendment. He's already speaking out against it. It's already making news, which is good. But I want to talk about in a little bit how years ago we already exposed all of this. And years ago, we've already exposed how the medical establishment is dying. The FDA and all of its cronies are losing, and they're imploding, and this is the result. Because first you ignore it, then you try and fight a little bit. They're at the boiling point where they're melting down, and this is their response. They have nothing but physical action. They have nothing but overload, meltdown levels of red alert scenarios to where they're trying to squash the whistleblower so it doesn't get any worse. But the FDA knows full well what's going on. They know key things we're going to get into, how superbugs are dominating everything, and garlic is actually the answer. We have the studies. They know that 80% of all the antibiotics used are from livestock, and they permit that. They know all of this. They know that even though every corporation is funding Monsanto and funding these, anti-GMO labeling bills, that organic is still $31 billion as of just a couple of years ago. I mean, it's exploding. They can't stop it.
Yes.
You're winning the battle.
And that's why they want to look at social media. They want to know what they can do. It's now an info war. It's an info war and a PSYOP war. And the FDA is saying essentially the same thing with this RFP. They're saying essentially the same thing the Pentagon said a while back. Remember that televised news conference that they had with people who were information officers for the Pentagon? And this one lady officer gets up and says, nobody believes what we're saying. They just dismiss it as mindless propaganda because we're not telling them the truth, essentially. And so the FDA is looking at this as well. They're trying to manufacture consent for their agenda. And a vital part of that is to know whether or not their propaganda is working. So they want to have a company that's going to do it. This is the sort of stuff that used to be done secretly. Now they're just out in the open.
No, exactly. Kind of and that's the craziest part about it, is they're out in the open.
Yeah.
And we're able to, you know, push the headlines in such a way that we can get this to the mainstream media and ultimately win. But this reminds me of a key article that I was on actually with Alex, I think in September or 8 months ago or something. The GMO activists being targeted specifically by the government, by criminal government organizations, you know, actually looking for criminals, saying that GMO activists were concerning, and, you know, anything to do with GMOs was radical and right-wing extremism and things like that. This is what we're talking about. This is what Bank of America sees us as, these people that are not following the establishment agenda and should therefore be reported to the feds. And this expands into everything. And specifically, we can get into the fact that even though they're trying to squash the whistleblowing, even though they're trying to use disinformation campaigns and go into the comments of major news websites like InfoWars and just spam garbage all day long, even though they're doing all that, it doesn't even matter. Yeah. People are talking about it. And specifically, one way they're really trying to dominate this field for their own victory is by making it very challenging for supplement manufacturers or food manufacturers to even get good, high-quality organic ingredients. You know, whether we're talking about food that's been highly irradiated, such as if you get organic ingredients, sometimes you have to actually, by law, put them through mass irradiation. You know, or you have to use pesticides that are actually worse than some of the, you know, Roundup pesticides from Monsanto. All of this craziness is happening, and they're putting these laws and bureaucratic limitations on all of this so that you can't even get real food anymore. And that's why it's such a challenge to get organic, real ingredients. And I'm amazed that we've done it. I'm so glad to work with Alex on InfoWars Life with Super Male Vitality and everything, because it's so hard to get real organic ingredients.
Well, you've got this. It was the FDA themselves that has just floated new regulations that are going to be taking place in the next couple of years. And there was a story that came out last week in California where the FDA went to an organic farmer's farm and said, here's my badge, here are these new regulations, I just want you to know what's going to happen. You're no longer going to be able to make your fertilizer on the farm. You're no longer going to be able to till your ground with animals. We're going to have you buy all this stuff from big pharmaceutical, you know, the big fertilizer companies. You're going to buy synthetic petrochemicals and pesticides and this sort of thing, because we're going to outlaw the natural ways that people have farmed for millennia. That's just yet another place where they're coming after the family farmer, the organic farmer, and putting this burden of regulation on them until they drive them out of business. Regulations on so that's the way the government has always been used, is to put, for the large companies to come in and use bureaucracies like the FDA to put burdensome regulations on their competitors, which in this case are the small independent organic family farms, put them out of business so they've got a monopoly.
No, exactly. The FDA acts as a mafia corporation to impose its laws and regulations on the other corporations that aren't paying their dues, essentially. And what we've seen now is manufacturers that are actually using high-quality, super good organic ingredients get visited by military people in military uniforms that say they work for the FDA. It turns out they do. They're lieutenants and everything. They now use military terminology to designate the FDA officials. They come out to these factories with weapons and tell them, yes, we're going to have to check out what's going on. You know, as if they're criminals, as if the organic manufacturers out literally in the middle of farmlands with like the best possible stuff out there for anything, the cultivation, all the best regulations, all the best stuff. They're out there saying, yeah, we're going to have to take a look around. We're going to have to look at all your proprietary stuff, take some pictures, you know, all this stuff. Total harassment. Meanwhile, you have drug companies that are killing people, and they pay a few $1 million, which is like 0.001% of their actual annual profits, and then they get slapped on the wrist.
Because the FDA is really there to provide legal immunity for these companies. They look at something like SSRI drugs or Paxil, which just recently came out, and they said, look at how the reoccurrence of cancer or the mortality of cancer skyrockets when Paxil is given to women with breast cancer. Now, of course, Paxil is an SSRI antidepressant, and for the longest time, Paxil and these other Prozac, these other SSRIs, they would give them these drugs and for treatment of depression, And in the information there in the fine print, it says that it can make you even more depressed. It can make you suicidal. It can make you homicidal. It can exacerbate the very condition that you're taking it for. But nobody reads those. They just know this is FDA approved. And if somebody sues them in court, it's like, hey, I got an FDA approval, so I'm okay. It's my legal immunity.
No, exactly. And it costs $12 million to pay the FDA to go through even these simple processes, and then you have something, they look at it over and over again. And let's be clear. It's just like everything else establishment. There are some good functions of an organization that's meant to keep people safe, except they've gone beyond that in a rogue-like element where these corrupt bureaucratic maniacs have taken over and are targeting now small farms, small organic manufacturers, giving them the same regulations as they would Merck. Multi-billion-dollar company. Here's a company that makes $20,000 a year making small tinctures or something like that. And they give them the same infrastructure requirements as Merck.
Yes.
Or Pfizer or something. But then at the same time, you look, and it would be one thing if we just had this medicine. Okay, sometimes it's killing, 20% of the patients. Sometimes these vaccines are causing cancer or whatever. Okay, but how about the fact that, in some studies, turmeric is killing 80% of the cancer cells, or ginger, or, just adding lemon to water is amazing. Or, hey, how about drinking purified water is curing things? It's like the FDA is literally ignoring all of the real stuff in many of these cases, while targeting the real stuff at the same time, as Pfizer and Merck and everything just make billions of these death pills. And you can look over and over again. I mean, look, years and years ago, we were telling the FDA, the judge was telling the FDA, remove superbug breeding antibiotics from the animal feed.
Yeah.
It's going to kill us. Yes. It's going to cause superbugs. 80% of the antibiotics are in livestock. Remove superbug, look at this title, remove superbug breeding antibiotics from the animal feed. That was from 2012. But
the people who do it, they try to shut them down.
No, exactly.
Because they're organic, or they're free-range chickens, or they've got hogs that they let just graze, and their immunity to disease is naturally increased because they get out of this little tiny box inside of a factory. They get sunlight. They get to walk on the grass. They get to eat natural food. No, can't have that.
Exactly, and it's not even about animal rights, which is a great thing in some ways, in many ways. But it's about the fact that, hey, if we don't stop breeding superbugs, it will kill us.
Yeah.
It's not a nice little happy thing like, oh, we want to care for the animals. That's great and everything too.
You don't want to eat sick animals.
Well, hey, no, actually, they've been caught selling animals with cancer now. In China, they pump sewage into the meat.
Yes.
I mean, this is totally out of control, and obviously China isn't FDA regulated. But the point is, what's going on is the FDA is ignoring all this stuff, ignoring the fact that here we have in a medical news today, which is super mainline, super mainstream, garlic kills hospital superbug MRSA. That's pretty plain and simple, huh?
That's pretty amazing.
An ingredient in garlic may offer one of the best defenses against hospital superbugs, research shows. The compound is said to be effective even against highly resistant strains of the notorious MRSA bug, which has claimed many lives. And it has, because they try to use these antibiotics, these garbage antibiotics over and over again on these superbugs. And then they complain, and Obama has to issue executive orders to create more antibiotics, stronger antibiotics. Gee, which contractors are going to make billions on that?
See, the problem with using garlic, though, Anthony, there's a big problem with using garlic, and that is it can't be patented by some big pharmaceutical company. It's got to go.
Exactly.
It can't be effective.
David, don't worry. Pharmaceutical companies are already taking the sulfuric compounds from garlic and trying to patent them into a pill.
There you go.
To make money off it when the next plague comes and we all need garlic. But the simple reality is that, eating garlic, well, here's why this is so warped. Eating garlic is great. It will help you. If we actually took our science, though, that we were putting and pouring billions into these antibiotics, pouring billions into this cancer research that's never going to tell us anything, pouring all these billions of dollars. If we're going to take 1/100th of that and put it into research on how to take this garlic extract in a perfect way, in a perfect capsule, in a perfect organic, wholesome form, we could literally be wiping out superbugs like MRSA, be wiping out all of it, and not have to take antibiotics, which just deplete our gut flora. Then gut flora has been linked with the depletion of gut flora has been linked with mental illness like schizophrenia and depression, and then that causes even more insanity. The whole body is being systematically destroyed when you look at something like a pharmaceutical drug coming in. And that's why more pharmaceutical drugs are given to address the side effects. If we were actually going to put a little bit of cash into the garlic to replace some of these antibiotics, we would have better gut flora. We wouldn't have as much mental illness. We wouldn't have as many killings and murders and violent crime. It would be a complete domino effect in the good sense if we just were to put a little bit of money into garlic. That's just one thing. You have turmeric, you have iodine. They introduced iodine into the salt, and they saw a 10-point IQ increase over a shorter period of time. I mean, all of this is happening. The hormonal attack on our bodies, the estrogen mimickers, BPA, attacking us on a daily basis. If we were just going to take that out of the water, out of the water bottles, the plastic, which they knowingly put in, they chose only one with BPA, they knowingly put that in, we would see a world of difference. But guess what? The FDA decided not to ban BPA.
Yeah.
And then the next day, all the shareholders rejoiced and made billions upon billions over and over and over again, because it would mean that they'd have to use different plastics.
Same story over and over again. And
Why
even when
do
you talk about
they're monitoring us, because we're talking about this, and if some insider came out and talked about it, it would be game over. And that's what we need, is a call to arms, really.
That's right.
Introducing Pro One. All of your filtration in one system, portable, on the go. No more do you have 2 or 3 filters to just reduce sodium fluoride. You have a system that cuts out the sodium fluoride and up to 95% of hydrofluorosilicic acid. Advanced manufacturing technology combines silver-impregnated white ceramic with new Aquamedics advanced media for removal of fluoride and other heavy metals, all in one filter element. It is the only one that does it, and out of the gate, we have it discounted at 10% off with promo code WATER. This is the only system that in one unit helps reduce or remove pesticides, herbicides, chloramines, ammonia, and chlorine, hydrofluorosilicic acid, the most common form of fluoride not covered by other fluoride filter brands, and sodium hexafluorosilicate. Get your Pro Pure with the new Pro One filter today at InfoWarsStore.com or by calling 888-253-3139.
And we've been talking about the latest revelation about the FDA wanting to monitor social media chatter about product risks. Now, this is just amazing. They put out an RFP. They want someone that they're going to hire to keep track of things like the most cited news stories, the major themes of discussion, sentiment analysis, word clouds, message maps, and samples of verbatim consumer comments. They want to know what you think about what the FDA is doing so they can then more effectively propagandize you using PSYOPs and the information war. When I talked to William Binney, he said he was very concerned about the police state that we have entered, and he said we're no longer close to a police state. We are in a police state. For years, he monitored East Germany and the Soviet Union, and he knows exactly how this comes down. And now we see it happening even with the FDA. Once they know where you're getting your news, they send in the trolls, or they shut down that source using the power grab from the FCC. The FCC is now asserting that they are going to be able to shut down websites based on copyright assertions. Couldn't get that passed in Congress with CISPA, SOPA, or ACTA. They tried twice with CISPA, couldn't get it passed. So let's just have a year of action and allow Obama and his bureaucracies to do that.
Well, the ultimate dream of all these organizations, whether it's a corrupt corporation or a taken over establishment rogue organization within the government, is not to just track everything you're doing, but to shut down the opposition because they've already lost.
Yes.
In the beginning, that wasn't the goal. The goal was to ignore it or refute it in some ways, and that's why they, try to have key icons, like Alex and others on the news to try and make him look dumb. But ultimately, that ends up, of course, being a major victory, and more people tune in and more people realize what's going on.
They're not just creepy voyeurs. They're not just going to sit there. They're not just watching us just for the fun of watching us. They really do have an agenda, and we're seeing that come out now with the FDA, the FCC, other organizations.
They're planning the blitzkrieg.
Yes.
It's just a matter if we can have a scout go out on the hill with an old-fashioned telescope and tell us what's coming, and then we can prepare ourselves. Because they do want to, through things like CISPA on steroids, which is what's coming, shut down websites that they would call it endanger consumer health. So, for example, if I were to go ahead and publish, as I have multiple times, the fact that garlic is the answer to many superbugs, and that we should put real money into that instead of these antibiotics that are killing people, then that would be threatening consumer health. Because the FDA hasn't approved garlic. The FDA hasn't approved that. The EU says water doesn't hydrate people. It's not even been proven. That's quackery.
That's right.
So it would be endangering consumer health, and that's how they're going to do it. And they're going to issue something and say, please take this down. The FDA has decided this is against consumer health, just like selling real organic products, as we do with Super Male Vitality on InfoWarsLife.com. And I plug it because I believe in it, and everyone should get a hold of it. This is resisting and funding everything that we're talking about, because we're going to be the ones pioneering all this. We're going to be the ones pioneering all of these solutions over and over and over again. So you should go to InfoWarsLife.com and secure these organic products.
Absolutely. You know, just as we said, they're not just doing this just for the information. They're actually going to take action.
No,
you have to take action. You have to take responsibility for your life. You have to be self-reliant about, not only inform yourself about what the real risks are to you from these pharmaceutical drugs, but also understand what the, or these genetically modified foods, but also understand what the real advantages are. And then it's up to you to do something about it.
Well, you might not even get a chance to know if they manage to shut all this down. And just getting into GMO, Monsanto has so much pull, they can shut everything down. They've falsified FDA quotes in California to defeat GMO labeling bills. It's total insanity. We have to fight for our right to actually be able to speak.
Ask yourselves, what are you doing in this time of great challenge? What are you doing to unlock minds?
We've been talking about the amazing revelations of the FDA wanting to monitor social media chatter so they can more effectively propagandize you. And we've also talked about the FDA spying on whistleblowers, pointing out dangerous devices. So what does the FDA do? Well, they do things like record everything that they're doing on the internet, taking pictures of them with their computer, then using that to destroy the person's character. And we've got coming up in the next segment, Kathleen Willey, someone who blew the whistle on Bill Clinton's sexual misconduct. Same things happened to her. They went after her as well as all the other women who made allegations, tried to destroy them. She's going to be talking about that. She's very concerned about that as we see Hillary Clinton, apparently the front runner for the Democrats in 2016. But getting back to the FDA, we were just talking about garlic and the efficacy and the safety of that. It doesn't come with a long flyer talking about all these amazing side effects. Maybe if they had a flyer, the only side effect I can think of with garlic might be a possible bad breath or something. That's easily corrected. It's not dangerous.
The minimum average of side effects for pharmaceutical drugs is about 70. It can go up to about 500.
Wow.
Now, the thing is, I'm not against entirely Western medicine. I mean, it has its powerful implications. If you go and get in a car accident, you don't want to go to India and have someone, administer tinctures to you. You want someone to immediately give you surgery. So there's many, many benefits. And I have MD friends. In fact, I was just speaking to one yesterday, or a couple days ago, and he was telling me, we're so pressured to give antibiotics to everyone that comes in the door with a cold, which is a virus, or a flu from a virus. The antibiotics obviously don't do anything against viruses. But he was saying we're told from the higher-ups in the medical establishment to just give them antibiotics so they feel better mentally and they feel like we've done something. And he said some people, in fact, will insist for antibiotics when they know they have a cold or they'll leave.
Yeah.
It's total chaos. And he was telling me one of the things he likes to do is take elderberry. But when he tells people that, they think it's quack science. This is a guy with an MD that studied this. This is a guy that really knows what he's talking about in many ways, looking at this, saying, hey, I was checking out Natural Society, I was checking out InfoWars, all the stuff. He's a huge fan, saying, vitamin C seems like really to be the answer. And it's funny because we're not even pushing garlic. I just was reading one study where garlic trumps antibiotics. I mean, we could talk for 6 hours about anything. We could talk about turmeric, iodine, garlic, any of it. All of it's great. All of this is magnificent in many ways. It's killing cancer cells, destroying viruses. It's all there. You know what I mean? It just happens to be garlic. And one of the radio producers was telling me this awesome story about how he took garlic for a serious tooth infection. In fact, if he wants to get on the mic, he could share that with everyone.
Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. CJ here. I had actually taken garlic for a bad toothache that was related to a root infection because I'd read about the Army using garlic as a antibiotic substitute in the field when penicillin wasn't available. And I'd take a couple cloves a day. Within about 3 days, the swelling went down, pain went away, and the only side effect was garlic breath.
Wow.
Exactly.
Well, we're going to be on our own because they have announced quite publicly and repeatedly especially last fall, that they're no longer going to do any more antibiotic research. They put out these antibiotics. They've given them so broadly, giving them to cattle, to the animals in the food chain, that now there's a large immunity to the existing antibiotics, and they are radically cutting down the supply. I know my wife had to get had a prescription that she wanted to get renewed for antibiotics, and the price had skyrocketed. It was what had been about a $5 prescription was now $200 or $300.
Oh yeah,
and you couldn't even get it, even if you wanted to pay that kind of money, you couldn't get it and it was a generic. They were cutting it back. Just amazing.
Instead of fixing it and looking into garlic, looking into all of this, looking into real things that kill the bad bacteria, they're going to instead just push executive orders to do more antibiotics, more wide-spectrum antibiotics that push superbugs and all of it. It's total chaos, but we are winning. We can achieve this. Push the information out.
Thank you. Anthony Gucciardi, thank you for the information. Very important information.
You are watching the best of the Alex Jones Show, weekdays from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central. Watch live at Infowars.com/show or become a member of InfoWarsNews.com and help us take resistance to the next level.